Welcome to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. I'm your host, Casey Garrett, and together we'll be discovering and learning from inspiring voices of healers, medicine keepers, and visionaries. Every episode, we'll explore the world of health, vibrant wellness, and natural medicine for a new era of human society. Welcome to today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited today. Extra excited today. One of the medicines that has been calling me personally for years, I would say next to psilocybin, the most, has been the medicine of Huachuma, also called a San Pedro. And as we do, we have this awareness and put it aside and trust that it's going to come in at exactly the right time. And it did. So I'm really excited to share my personal experience with this beautiful, elegant, expansive medicine this month and season in our community, and to be joined today by SpiritBird Holton and Josh Meeder, who also have special reverence for this medicine, to really dive in and share with you guys the beautiful aspects of this particular medicine. So welcome, Josh Meeder and SpiritBird Holton. Thanks.
Thanks, Casey. It's good to be here.
So excited to share about this medicine. It has been, honestly, the most remarkable microdosing experience I've had since I began with psilocybin years ago, which is saying something for those of you who know me. So just for starters, for people who are new in our audience to hearing about this medicine at all, Josh, maybe we'll start off with you. Can you share with the audience, what is San Pedro, Huachuma? What does it come from? Where is it grown? How is it held? Just give us the basics.
Sure. Well, to start off with, it is a cactus, and it really originated in the Andes Mountains. So that's the areas of like Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia. The cactus tends to grow at higher elevations between 2,000, 3,000 meters. So originally, that's where the primary cactus came from. And, it's also called Echinopsis pachanoi. So there's different types of cactus that are very closely related. And, Huachuma in the indigenous language really speaks to it is just the cactus, or it can be the brew itself. So it's kind of a unilateral term. The San Pedro came in around the 16th century when the Spanish conquistadors came in. They saw the shamans, and they probably experimented with the Huachuma and trying to bridge that gateway from the indigenous, because they were really colonizing and bringing in Catholicism. They called it Saint Peter, or San Pedro is Saint Peter. So they helped that I don't know if I'd call it help, but they used that to help bring in the native and indigenous cultures to Christianity. The reason, and in the native dialect, Huachuma really loosely translated is opening of the head or adjustment of the head, which if you're getting some experience, you'll quite understand. And the reason that they called it San Pedro was because St. Peter had the keys to heaven. And so it was the Spanish's best kind of approximation of what they were experiencing.
Thank you. We just repeat this over and over through history, don't we? Don't we? Beautiful. So how, in your understanding, have we as humans incorporated Huachuma throughout history into our practice? Was it seen as a medicinal plant, or was it seen more as a spiritual connection plant, or both?
It was actually probably more than that. The earliest written, or at least petroglyphic history, is about 3,000 years ago. And there are sites that can show animals, deities holding the cactus. So it was certainly spiritual, medicinal for healing the community and ailments, but it was also a large part of the culture. So it was kind of this ubiquitous plant throughout the indigenous people of that region.
So I have heard it most commonly referred to as grandfather medicine, which always made me really curious. Now that I have had my own experience with, I can totally see why. I totally see why. But I would love to hear from you guys where that comes from.
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. So one of the interesting thing is I was having a discussion with someone about it and like referred to a grandfather. And what I realized is you actually have to have the definition of grandfather in your own expectations because they didn't quite have a good relationship, so it wasn't a great comparison. But I think in the energetics of a mature statesman, elder, masculine, what does that look like? That looks like patience, guidance, someone who has tremendous amount of wisdom that really will encourage your grandkids, go out and explore, go learn. It's really this gentle guidance, that very protective nature. So to me, that's what a mature masculine grandfather energy feels like, and it very much so with this plant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that sense of just holding steady while you gradually get to where you need to get to.
Mm-hmm. I can feel that. I will share much more about my experience in that, but I can attest to just very, very aligned with that spirit. Yeah. Thank you so much. My next question is around the physical experience of Huachuma. So can you talk about how the medicine connects with our body from a biological sense and perhaps also a spiritual sense in your experience?
Sure, we'll probably split this up. I'll talk a little bit about the medical. Again, not a medical doctor, but just generally speaking, where mushrooms hit the serotonin receptors, San Pedro does too. But there's a difference and a broader perspective. It also hits the dopamine and epinephrine, so it's a much more expansive process. The other real physiological point is the consumption or uptake of mescaline is a very, very slow process in the body. So where mushrooms may come in fast and have a duration of maybe an hour to 3 hours or in that range, it can take the cactus, an hour to 2 hours to really start settling in. And because it is such a slow absorption, these experiences can go 8, 10, 12 hours long.
Casey, I was delighted to hear a little bit about how San Pedro kind of called you to it, because I find that most medicines call people in the same way that they work, where mushrooms tend to kind of network or, through connections, through mutuality, where I is kind of like around the peripheral and then it's like right there. And with Toad, you're just like suddenly in it. You never heard of it before and now you heard of it and now you're doing a thing. And San Pedro or Huachuma is very much this very, very slow. You can feel it from a distance. It's very gentle and it just gradually builds. So it sounds like the way you were kind of called to it is similar.
100%. Yes. And I find it really interesting. It's the same way that the plant grows too. Whereas mushrooms are all over, populous and all around the world. There's something very methodical and patient about the cactus itself and the way it grows. I was researching the cactus itself, of how it takes a long time to reach maturity. Once it does, it only blooms once for a night or two every summer. And the way it pollinates, its whole process speaks to its patience and its maturity, its eldership and its wisdom. And it feels very old to me. It feels like old the way when I worked with Amanita muscaria feels like the old mother. Mm-hmm. San Pedro feels very much like the old father. Yeah.
There's a place on that too, on how it grows, because as cactuses grows, it does put on more height than most cactuses. So it is a fast growing cactus in the cactus world there. But what I love about it is really calm and gentle. And if it falls off and wants to lay here, like I'm going to take a nap, it will root in place. It's such a resilient cactus. No, you cut it off, you clone it, you stick it in dirt, and it will just plod along and continue to do its thing.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the reasons I really, really love this medicine, and, there's reasons that I love all the medicines, in my work with it, I tend to work more with ayahuasca, and of course there's no hierarchy, but that medicine gets kind of revered as being this like pedestalized medicine. And I've worked with it for years before I worked with Huachuma. And I just remember feeling like, oh my gosh, this is holy, holy, holy medicine. Really just like beautiful, high ceremony. And I think medicines have a way that they kind of reflect how life works. And what I think is interesting about the way Huachuma gradually builds is like life is a great teacher that way. When you're young, you probably have some experiences, say like you have a hard time having boundaries as a child because of your life circumstance. Well, life's going to lead you to small teachings over time for how you can have those boundaries. And so each time, it's not like you get the lesson and then you're done with the lesson. Life is just about embodying it with even more challenge. And so Huachuma has a way of really gradually taking you through that process over the course of a day or maybe several weeks as you're microdosing, where it's like, here, first, let me gently give you this little bit. This is what it feels like to be in your heart, or this is what it feels like to just receive without having to try, or this is what it feels like to just rest for a second. And then as you go on throughout your experience with it, a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, so that when you're actually really ready to receive the fullness of the medicine, it's not a shock to your system.
Beautiful. I found that to be so too. One of the things I found similar to my experience with Huachuma to psilocybin is that it kind of matches your own soul's cadence. It doesn't push you too hard, too fast. Like some of the other medicines are kind of like ready or not, ready or not. And it's a lot of people that I work with they want to move thoughtfully, intentionally, and that's why they're in part why they're microdosing. They're having their growth in kind of bite-sized pieces that they can integrate into their real life in a manageable way. So they're not suddenly destabilized. They're not biting off more than they can chew. And I found this similar relational quality in Huachuma, that it can hear you and it responds and it works with you and it works with your own unique soul cadence. So
that's a great point. Even how it comes in the body, where mushrooms or ayahuasca will start to just dump in, the way San Pedro comes in on a small little wave, like, okay, there you are. And then you kind of come out a little bit and there's a little bit more until it builds, and it's so gradual and it's such an easy introduction. In fact, I think with Huachuma, if you haven't had other psychedelic experiences, it may be easy to miss the subtlety of the medicine right away. But if you had experience with other psychedelics, it's absolutely beautiful on how it just waves in and then it tapers off. It doesn't just dump you out. The one thing I will say from the physiological side is, as some medicines are purgative, some aren't, Huachuma can be. I find it generally passes pretty quickly. So there is a little bit of, you may feel some nausea in the beginning. It's actually the mescaline interacting with the serotonin that's actually stored in the gut, which is really interesting. So, but that usually subsides pretty quickly or within the first hour.
Beautiful. And that is mostly with a ceremonial experience, right?
With the ceremonial experience, yeah, exactly.
Right. Great. Since lots of our listeners and community are very familiar with psilocybin mushrooms, I know one of the questions they'll ask is, how is it similar or dissimilar from psilocybin? So love for you to reflect on any of those aspects.
Sure. Well, I think there's a similarity is in the way it can bring people together, but they do it in different ways. So, mushrooms are probably more in tune to showing you where you're connected to other people, maybe through vision, maybe through understanding things from a different perspective, finding similarities that you didn't know were there. With Huachuma, it's the connection piece is really from the heart of like actually directly interacting with other people. So whether you're in ceremony or whether you're microdosing, that's a big way that it brings the teachings through and works with you, is here is this place where you meet, where you can actually just be emotional with other people. And when you're in that space of emotion, you learn some other things in the process.
And to contrast that a little bit where it's different, as SpiritBird said, is the mushrooms are networking and the mind can go different ways and you're pulling all these things together. Whereas the Huachuma is, because it's heart-centered, it's just so ever present. And so it's a much slower thing. And from if we're talking macro experiences, if you're experiencing the fireworks and dazzling light shows of mushrooms, it's not the same. There's visual distortions, but it's not that intensity. I would just call it gentler. from a macro experience. From the micro, I think the what you've kind of discussed, Casey, is like the expansion. There's just, to me, and with the medicine, there's such a drawing out of time, of relationship, to be centered and to be present and really make more heartful decisions and actions.
I'll add a little piece on the body too. With mushrooms, you can definitely use them to get more in touch with your body and listen to your body. I find one of Huachuma's genius is really on honoring your body. There's a way that it has a great sense of acceptance in its teachings, which isn't super glamorous if you're trying to change your life. Nobody's like, oh, I just want acceptance. And it's a thing that most of us need. Like, oh, actually, like my mind knows I'm not taking very good care of my body, but now I actually accept that maybe I'm not taking the best care. And there's no shame. There's no punishment for it. It's just, and now I want to. And I think with microdosing, in the same way that mushrooms can give you space for your decisions, where you might normally just jump into a previous habit, it gives you a little bit more space to be like, maybe I should do this differently today. Huachuma can do that too. And I think in a way that, again, is really powerful for reinforcing your connection with your body and how to really take care of what your body really wants for nourishment.
Mm-hmm. The one last thing I meant to add is the similarity is the connection with nature. It is a nature-based. You don't get more grounded than something that's grown in the earth for so long and just absorbs sun. It's a great medicine with nature connections as well. There's a commonality I've seen in that.
Amazing. All of that. So I can speak to all of those points you just brought up. While I've been microdosing with San Pedro, I've been gardening like crazy and making a pollinator garden in my garden. And it's just been, the sunlight has been unreal, and just the life. Yeah. How much life is attracted to this vitality, and this resonance of this medicine has really been remarkable. I've also really been blown away by the nuance with which I feel my body. Mm-hmm. Psilocybin is very physical too, but this is kind of a level where it's cellular almost. It's the nuance and the texture of feeling my physical body. And then the last piece that's been very noteworthy in difference from psilocybin for me is this medicine loves to move. It has an ability to move, but also stay deeply grounded and centered at the same time. Mm-hmm. I describe it as kind of widening me and deepening at the same time. And it amplifies and enhances with movement. So the more I swim and move and stretch and bend and hike, it's like you're able to stay very centered at the same time. Your limbs have more expansion and movements to them in a really beautiful way. Lastly, to what SpiritBird spoke to, absolutely. Some of the people in our microdosing community that express part of their psilocybin experiences, they feel such innate expansion, and the relational aspect of self enhances, but at the same time, they feel very inward. It expands, but they're very content being inward, spending more time alone. And while that feels part of the journey, they miss that connection with others and people along the way. And I have exactly what SpiritBird said, where this is more almost like a more natural, organic MDMA in a way, where it's heart expansive, but in a very gentle, organic, natural way, where you just want to connect. You're able to see things, see beyond the outer shell of people and more what's going on with them internally, and able to connect at that level.
That's really the history of the origins too. This was used as communal medicine. I mean, it is by its very nature doing that, bringing in the connection, opening that. So I love hearing how that's affected or been present for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've always cuddled my dog, but I've been cuddling my dog more than usual. I don't think he minds, but just FYI, if you're microdosing with San Pedro and you feel more cuddly and tactile and affectionate, I have a feeling that's part of the medicine with this medicine.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to tell you really quick an anecdote. Just for me, you mentioned you have been gardening and making a pollinator garden. And this summer, just a couple months ago, we've been gardening too. And we keep the cacti on their front porch in the summertime. And we had a monarch that made a cocoon and I don't know what you call it, hatched on one of our plants. It was lovely.
Yeah. On the San Pedro.
Yes. Yeah. And we literally sat there and watched it. I sat there for 2 hours, and just that feeling of awe and being childlike at new life and butterfly. And I was like, what a way to start the life, emerging as a butterfly off the San Pedro cactus. Like, that's pretty magical.
Yeah. Yeah. I found that butterflies everywhere in the last 2 weeks. I've actually started to write down because I live in the tropics now just for the last 2 years. So lots of the animal life, the flora and the fauna is still quite new to me. So I've been keeping track of all the different species of butterflies that I've seen just since I started this process. And it's been pretty remarkable. Yeah. Let's talk about, so people in our community are typically microdosing and then get drawn to work at a deeper level with the medicine. So can you speak to, I know you guys both have experience with larger dose and ceremonial Huachuma ceremony. So let's talk about what people might expect from a Huachuma ceremony.
So in traditions, it can be held late into the evening, over the night. In our experiences, it's usually in the day, a very early start. So I would imagine it's the same for most practitioners, the setting of intentions, the calling of the group together. From the experience, it's very, very slow. So after you consume, which might be 9 a.m., 10 a.m., it's going to be an hour or so before that medicine may actually settle in. So there's just a lot of natural conversation. And we always, what you'll hear is like a lot of people be like, I think I need to lay down right now. So it's like that first wave, it's like, I'm going to lay down. And you have this kind of blissful experience as you're eased into it, and then you're kind of let out of it. And everyone, when people are together, you'll notice a certain rhythm with it. And that rhythm just keeps building. And the one thing from a macro experience that's much different than the other medicines is that this is actually something that you can eat on while you're in the ceremony. So you're not full days fasting. So obviously recommend very light snacks throughout the day, but around lunchtime, it's getting stronger. And there's a place where you feel the container almost comes like this, just envelops. And there's a place where that's where most people may gather. They may lay down. There might be the cuddle pile. And it's very, very soft. And that continues. It'll seem like how you explained it, the widening and the deepening is kind of the group goes like that throughout. And really then on through dinner time, that's probably the heaviest or the deepest would be a better way. And the way it's been done is like bringing people together for food, for a light dinner, like that aspect of community, which we don't have or we don't get to share as much, where there's conversation. And as that food settles in and the medicine is starting to pass through the system, bringing it down, and then having some sort of ceremonial closure, whether that be around the fire or a call to gathering again. So that's how I've generally experienced it. And
yeah, and on the spirit side of things, again, we spoke a bit about acceptance and about the connection and devotion to the body that it can cultivate or help you kind of reconnect to. It certainly has its own special way of connecting to source. And again, I find it to be very generous in that way, where I think it'll help if there's something you're trying to balance in your life. That's where I would probably recommend working with this medicine. Or if you're working with not feeling your worth, this is where I would bring in this medicine. But it tends to show you where you're not balanced. So that might be something related to the body, that might be related to overgiving, and kind of helps you adjust to a more balanced way of being. So likely before a macro ceremony, you're probably may or may not be aware, but you're probably going to start to track things that are out of balance a little bit for a ways into it. And then have a clarity of like, oh, I actually need to sleep. or like, oh my gosh, I have not been around people as much as my soul needs, or something like that. And then, of course, the integration is going to be putting that into practice afterwards too. Now that I understand where I'm out of balance, let me go ahead and make the adjustments in my life so that I can have more balance.
Mm-hmm. The other aspect I'll add to that is really going back to the connection piece, the healing from the group members to the group members to the participants. What it is absolutely magical about is pulling out the little threads from each person and connecting them without effort. It's just so comfortable. And whether, I don't know a better term other than acceptance, like when you're in that space, people are just open and still. And they do what we don't do anymore, is that active listening. So the connections, the direct connections with people, and really diverse people, like people you wouldn't think like would match up, where they just absolutely come together for the right moment for each of their perspectives. The community aspect of it, just from a healing standpoint, is truly miraculous.
Magic. I'm curious how you guys have experienced it. Of all the medicines that I've worked with, this medicine wants me outside. It really wants me outside, and every minute. And when it comes to ceremony, are your ceremonies held outdoors in nature?
You can really go either way. Depending on your setting. I think even if you have an indoor space, then making sure there is access to outdoor is really important. I think some of it depends also just on weather and conditions, to be honest. I've heard, because it's a very outdoor one, I've heard some not so great experiences where people don't have any option and end up baking in the sun, and their body just needs like a little recovery time where they can cool off or, take a break. So I think, we kind of like a balance of both.
Yeah. And because it is that wide medicine, when it goes wide, people may be in different places. So there could be someone who needs like just the cool, fresh air, or someone that might need a little quieter, contained, darker space. So there will be a lot of movement throughout the whole ceremony. So having, I don't want to call them stations, but different environments and where people can be is really, really helpful. But primarily outdoors is good.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm still piecing together what it is about that. Part of me thinks because it is so widening and expansive, I just feel like in my aura being, and it's almost like, oh, the house is too small to contain this now, this medicine and this energy. It needs, a bigger platform for itself. So beautiful. In terms of the preparation for Huachuma, is there anything particular about this medicine that people, whether it's lifestyle things, I know both of you coach people, incorporate these medicines into larger lifestyle change in terms of, have you noticed anything in terms of preparation, lifestyle modalities, other practices that are really complementary for this particular medicine?
Well, one of the things that I work with is a archetypal system that's really shamanic in nature. And so this is kind of true for any medicine. I'll speak broadly and then maybe more specifically to Huachuma. I think it's really important to just understand where you are and where you are in your journey. So someone who is maybe dealing with a lot of self-doubt, something that they need to cultivate in themselves is that confidence and not overthinking what other people think. So you're going to give somebody that's in that space completely different advice and pathways from someone who maybe is very into themselves and is learning humility in their process. And I think that's something that gets skipped over a lot in a lot of spiritual work and medicine work, is we're in different places. So in preparation with Huachuma, I think that's the place to really tune into is, okay, where am I? Where might I be out of balance a little bit? And since it can be a very, very subtle medicine, it's going to be in more subtle places. Like I feel like it's almost like in kind of corners of your awareness that it's going to bring forward stuff. And I like what you said earlier with that it can hear you, because you can converse with any medicines, but I feel like with other medicines, they want you to be more clear and pronounced and like, I want this, or I'm asking for this. With Huachuma, it's like, no, I can hear what you're really wanting. Way back there, I hear that. So be prepared for that. In general, I mean, I love shamanic practices in general for helping you understand, Huachuma. I think this is partially where it's inviting you into nature, is it's going to help you find the balance between the different kind of realms. So your more spiritual realm, your more earthly realm, and your inner realm is going to bring all of that together. So I like shamanic practice for helping you understand how to navigate that. And then somatic practices in general are really helpful before and after, since there's such a strong body connection.
Yeah. I would say the medicine actually really creates the space for your own integration. It's strange in its properties of that, because the experience of being able to sit in such stillness, in such connection, and as you mentioned, cellular levels, when you're at the outside or afterwards, that is so deep in your cells that you just feel it. Like you can say, like, I actually need some space. It's a way that it just opens up, however it needs to come in, whether that be the somatic practices. But you'll notice, like, okay, yeah, I do need some more space, or this is too much, and your body's telling you it, where then you can take action, where I think some of the other medicines come in with much stronger lessons, like, you should take this action. This one's just like, hey, you may want to look at this.
Yes, to all of those things. Yes, I find that all to be true. I was reflecting of all the medicines I've worked with, the experience with this medicine, a lot of the other medicines, I see the deep need to have strong support with your integration. And to those points you just said, this medicine, its spirit lends itself to real-time integration all the time. Like you said, it doesn't rush you. Instead of teaching you the lesson directly, it allows you to come to your own realization, your own awareness. And then it's like, it's okay, honey, once you get there. I'm still here. I still love you. And you're like, oh, yeah. And in that way, I can see the grandfather medicine in that. And I totally see your point with a lot of the people I've shared that with too, don't have a necessarily positive association with our modern term. And so I've been thinking of it more of like chief energy, chief energy, that it is the man, the presence, who is an elder, who may not speak a lot, but is always watching and observing, is able to hold and doesn't necessarily tell you what to do, but hold space for you until you figure out what to do on your own. And is deeply wise, patient, and knowing that the lessons are going to be best learned, best absorbed when we come to it in our own time. That's how it feels to me.
Yeah, that's a real, like, that visual, like, of the chief, right? In the medicine experience, one of the other differences, because it's so long and so gentle, and you're where in maybe say a mushroom or an ayahuasca, where the messages are coming so fast. In a container with San Pedro, you actually can process a little bit in the moment. And when you say chief, I could see a chief trying to correct a young boy in the tribe. He would go over in the moment, drop this little bit of wisdom, and then come back out and let that person still continue with it. So it's really an accurate description of what happens in the ceremony.
Mm-hmm. I'm always curious when different medicines come in at different times. And I know my experience of this medicine, as I shared in the beginning, it's been really profound, and in that way where you didn't know you needed something so much until you experience it. And it was like, this is what it would feel like to have this. And so much of what I have felt, I feel like, is the thing that's so missing in our society right now, is this elder, wise masculine, right? That holds this presence, that holds, and it's more like the universe speaks through him versus him himself, right? So it's been remarkably healing at an individual level, but also too, I think this medicine is here now for the collective, certainly.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Casey.
Mm-hmm. In terms of all of your clients, so in witnessing your clients that you've worked with who've worked with this medicine, what are the big shifts that you've seen in real practical ways in people's lives after? It might be personal, it might be professional. So curious.
Well, SpiritBird mentioned it earlier. One, the level of acceptance is if someone comes in with anxiety or they're stressing out, the ability to just say, this is what it is. It's not here forever, and I'm okay, is like literally life-changing on that. What else can you think? I mean, that's to me one of the biggest things is that and then the body connection, like being able to know the lessons come in so deep through the heart into that cellular level. You don't have to think about it. There's just a sense of knowing if you're on the path or off the path with it.
I've seen folks really cultivate a sense of home in themselves and being able to stay centered in themselves in a gentle way in navigating all of the world's physical, mental, spiritual things that are happening in your family, relational, just being able to have a sense of, peace in the process while still being just present and gentle. And I've seen that on the professional side with folks as well that are working with the medicine, because it has a tendency to show you where you're maybe not in balance or could be more in balance. This is a place where, in the entrepreneurial world or the business world, or even just professional in general, we still have this sense of rush. And where I see it really influence people is they can still have goals and still be incredibly successful without having to have that like push or force or stress that goes along with it.
Yeah, along that, from the professional side, it's almost like when you have a goal in front of you, that's your horizon. And it seems to be opened up. So it's like you need to get there, but there's still an eye on the bigger picture. When we talk about acceptance, people with significantly divergent opinions, there's just a lot more ease to be like, okay, I don't feel that, but I'm not holding as much judgment. And it just really, widens that perspective, kind of deepens the resiliency and the body connection. So from a leadership perspective, it's amazing because entrepreneurs, leaderships, stuff's always coming in. To be able to hold the still, the steady, and the calm, also just inspires those around. It's a real ripple effect, but that long-term view, I think, is really helpful.
Yes, and yes, and yes. I felt all of those things, and I would add, I have felt it's been really remarkable, like much more of a sense of time and control isn't the right word, just a comfort with the present, an expansiveness of the present, and feeling an extreme aversion to any kind of pressure. Like things coming from the external that are pressuring and controlling, they just seem very far away and outdated. In a way, it's very interesting. Also, too, I noticed with psilocybin when there was kind of a confrontation or a challenge, aggressive energy, lots of dissonance, I would still feel it profoundly, but it would metabolize more quickly. Once I started working with psilocybin, I would like feel it fully, but it would clear. Huachuma, it feels like it's so far away. It feels like fear is farther away. And again, very separate from this weirdo. So it's very protective. I've felt this very wide energy, but also protective in that. And I think it's beautiful for sensitive people. I work with a lot of sensitive people. You probably do too. And people that part of when they come to practice, they're like, I love all of the benefits, but I'm kind of afraid of feeling even more than I already feel. Like I'm already the most sensitive person in every room. I feel like this medicine, particularly, it allows you to retain your sensitivity and your empathy, but you have this widened bandwidth to hold it, but not have it overwhelm or entangle with you as much as maybe mushrooms do. Have you guys found that to be true also?
Yeah, and especially in a group, not only is it that gentle for the sensitive person, but because the way the medicine in a group holds it, it actually is an invitation for them to step forward. So where they may have been holding back on sharing their opinion, it's such a safe and like invitation space for them to come out. So I've seen that quite a bit where Someone in a different setting or different medicine might have just been in the room a little bit more processing. This just seems to elicit that connection, very permission and gentle base, but they're not alone as much.
Well, and talk about like actual benefits and how we see it affect people on whether you're microdosing or macrodosing, is developing the skill set to actually talk to people and actually engage with people. And I know for a lot of sensitive individuals, that's a place too. Generally speaking, folks that are sensitive like to connect on a deeper level. And sometimes it feels like people aren't available for that. So it can create this gap between you and other people that is kind of hard to navigate. It's like, well, I'm either in and, masking, or I'm out, or I'm on the outside with this outside group. And where I see, like, in a really practical way, the medicine help people is just kind of pulling away some of that fear and overstimulation, so you can really engage with people in also a balanced way.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. The other thing I'm curious to see if you see this in your clients too is our tendency, I think this is especially true for sensitive people, the needing to prove. The needing to prove ourselves, the needing to have these things that will prove our self-worth. This medicine really works that edge too. So it's not a confidence in the sense of the word that we often think of confidence. It's this confidence that comes from within and a clarity of self and self-worth, that achievement becomes more meaningfully focused rather than I'm doing this thing for how the external world is going to view it, versus like, I'm doing this because it's an extension of myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I'd love to touch on your personal work a little bit if we can. So one of the things I was reading and checking out Josh's work that I so appreciate. I work with a lot of healers, a lot of guides, the vast majority of them women. And one of the edges is they bring all of their feminine gifts and force to their work, but sometimes it's that masculine structure of our practices that is where we need to move into to kind of bring balance and holism to our practices. So I'd love for you to speak to, you work with a lot of guides and healers in your practice from the business and business frameworks component. So I'd love to give you the floor to speak to what you have learned from working with healers and guides and those people who are very, very grounded in the work itself. Do you have any advice or counsel for them to bring some of these structures and frameworks, kind of the masculine presence, into guideship?
Sure. So interestingly, what I've seen working with largely my clientele is solo female entrepreneurs. And what I've seen is there's a distortion of what the masculine needs to be. So there's this distortion of like, it's aggressive, it's driven, it's this. And that's why when I look at it, I make sure, like, let's set what the balance is from a masculine and feminine energy, the feminine of creation, the masculine of support and surrounding and protection. So literally getting clear on the masculine feminine definition is probably a good place to start, because if you think of masculine as aggressive, driven, I mean, to me, that's an imbalance or an immature version of the masculine. So there's not that fight of like, I have to be X or Y. So really it's embodying both sides, that fullness of it. On a larger or a broader scope, my call in this world is to really help impact the most people. And to me, that's through leadership. I developed a space up in Pennsylvania, and I looked at that and I launched over 36 small businesses, most women-owned, in this great entrepreneurial thing. And what I looked is each one of those, I had an impact there. It rippled out. Each one of those businesses rippled out. So working with leadership, if we can get into the leadership, not only of politics and business, but specifically business, it will affect so many people. And if you have a good, heart-centered, balanced leader, the ripple effect that they have, to me, is just amazing. And that's really where I've tried to focus my work, is where can we get people that can impact the most people, to find their heart, to get spiritually aligned where their business and their personal values are aligned. That's an unstoppable force of change.
100%. I did a survey a couple of years into our community, the people who were coming to practice. I started to see these patterns and I was like, okay, they're healers, they're creatives, and they're leaders. And I was looked at zoomed out from a nature's perspective. Who should I inform to build the future? It's the leaders, the creatives, and the healers, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just nature gravitates to those people. And I couldn't agree more. Yeah. To work with people that then have in turn influence over hundreds of thousands or millions of people, to be held in their presence.
And I love how you identified the creatives, the leaders, and the other ones, because they're all different approaches. For the creatives, it's helping bring the grounded sense of like, don't stop dreaming, but have a place of action. And, I spoke a little bit to the feminine relationship to the masculine, and from coaching the masculine, learning to understand what a mature and balanced and powerful feminine energy can be. So it's really interesting to find those places of insertion and where that starting point is, and all about rounding out the balance of both energies for the good of all.
Can I speak briefly to what I see in some of your work?
Sure.
I notice, I agree that there's, in the creative side of things, and especially that feminine side, things just kind of build and roll out. So with a lot of people that are more in the feminine, it feels almost like violent to consider doing something like putting structure in your business, or having a business plan, or mapping your data, right? Like for a lot of us, that's like, oh, I feel like I'm dying if I do that. But the energetics of the masculine and feminine, like the feminine leads and moves, and the masculine really follows behind that and supports it so it can keep going. And if it's the masculine isn't there, then that's just spiraling around and not going anywhere. And I find that you have that ability to be able to be with the feminine, see what it's wanting to do and relate. You're a creative person too, but follow up with that. And this is an actual plan that supports your vision. But, this is how we can bring it into reality. This is how we can add the SEO into your website. This is how we can, align it with your life and like get really granular and practical that allows people to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. And to me, this is so much embodied in how I have received Huachuma as a spirit. It is that masculine where it is in the background, and with the solidity and the foundation, it's solid. It's like, it's earthy. It's not going anywhere. And so with that foundation, you can feel more spacious. You can feel more flowing and more free to experiment and try and do things when you have this solidity behind you. That's true, I think, in our personal life, but that's also true in our businesses too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. SpiritBird, how about you? So in your practice and your coaching, what are you seeing up right now this year? This year has been pretty momentous. So I'd love for you to speak to any themes you're seeing with people, what's really up for people, and how are you supporting them maybe differently than you have in the past?
Well, I think something that I'm noticing is growing in the world, a growing need and a growing desire, is really that sense of partnership. And that can look a lot of different ways. So that can look like wanting to be in partnership, in our 3D world, in our communities, but that can look like being in partnership, with medicine, rather than having it pedestalized or having it tell you what to do, right? It's like actually being in communication. It wants to work with you and your uniqueness to bring something forward. So that's like a very niche place where I see that partnership coming in. Certainly the masculine and feminine partnership is wanting to develop, and then partnership with spirit, understanding how spirit moves through you, how life wants to use you to help bring balance into the world. So that's a really big theme. As far as working with people, again, I working with this archetypal system, to me, everybody has an individual path. And with that, with the particular energetics that you've come into the world with, that means that you're not boxed in, but if those energetics tend to be true, then these certain lessons also tend to be true. And if these lessons tend to be true, then how you can move through those lessons, there's a common way to do that. And for me, what I'm seeing in the folks that I work with and in the world is a lot of people have made it through the first couple big lessons. And now they're moving into just like a more, I want to say, I don't know how I can say it other than gentle and radical at the same time. Like life is really asking them to like, okay, you've gotten these things, you got boundaries, you got like over talking, you got like all this stuff. But now I want you to actually share what's inside of you out here and in a way that, it can be received so we can make some changes in the 3D world. So that's probably rounding it back, the partnership place where a lot of folks that I'm seeing are really looking at the resistance that they didn't realize that they had, especially in the spiritual world. If you're coming from a world where you've been very, very spiritual, this last year has probably been life saying and showing you time to get 3D, time to actually do something with it, time to bring it into your relationships, time to bring it into your work. And if you've been maybe more in the conventional side of things, you've been like active, just doing your job, going in and out of the day-to-day life, that I'm seeing with those folks, life is really asking you to, okay, time to come to this other side of the circle and really explore this other part of you. So I feel like that's just the balancing that's happening. And I know with everything that's up, that can bring a lot of charge and trigger, and kind of bringing it back to Huachuma and this sort of sense of acceptance and timing. There's also a wider lens that's available to us, and life is working its way out through that right now. So I think if we can just remember that that's what's happening, it can give us a little space from our reactions. And that is what brings in the connection that really most of us actually want.
Amen. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. But too, I think this year, there's so much happening right now. It's just been energetically overwhelming. Is this the mantra I keep hearing from people over. And part of it is just giving ourselves the space and perspective to zoom out a little bit, to recognize that we are in a really unique moment in time right now. We're in a really unique moment in history. We're in a really unique moment for our evolution as people. And so it's always a little bit chaotic, right? When we're in that up-leveling as a species moment that we're in right now. Beautiful. Anything you two would love to share in closing about Huachuma or just your wider work right now? I'd love for you to just open the floor. Anything else you'd like to share with folks?
It's a pretty broad question. One of the lessons that's been up for me recently is the concept of looking up. And that is when you're here, this is your whole world. So whether that's the phone, the task you're on, if you just look up a little bit, okay, now I can see my whole email inbox. If I look above that, I can see the window. If I look about that, I can see the sky. And it's just that continual practice of taking the wider stance and the wider perspective. It is so needed here. I think there's such a beautiful opportunity in this moment to actually effectuate change. The status quo is in question. All the norms are out, and people are searching for that place of finding in self, because before you could bury yourself in work or you could go off this direction, but when everything's in motion, you really have to be solid in your own place. And once you can create that for yourself, you can create that for community. And that's the piece. And that's my sincere hope in this, is we can all take a wider perspective and create that space of connection.
Beautifully said. SpiritBird?
What's coming through for me right now is, I think, as I'm a Capricorn, I'm driven. I have goals, I have things I want to do, places I want to get to. And also what I see for a lot of folks is that's where the stress comes in. And then I think in American society, again, especially on the entrepreneur business success ladder, we can get entangled with this idea that being more successful / making more resources is what will relieve the stress. And I think actually what we're being asked to do is reevaluate our relationship with what that is. And one of my favorite teachings from Huachuma is that actually success comes from play. And actually you're safe when you give yourself more time and you get to where you want to get to when you are allowed to just slow down. And again, it's not the fancy thing that we're driven after for most people, but it's also one of the best ways to get there is to give yourself space for that play and for that rest. That's actually the nervous system regulation. That's actually the safety that most of us are looking for when we're pursuing things externally. So Huachuma isn't going to make you abandon your goals,
right,
but it is going to show you a more balanced way. And
yeah. And I can personally reflect on that, being married to and living with this woman. I fell into the masculine of like, there was a place where I'm just getting some stuff moving and I was really focused and I was getting to capacity. And she's like, take a break. I'm like, that's not how you do it. No. And with all good ideas, it takes me a day or two to realize that she's as smart as she is. And it was really the truth is that like, okay, I'm taking a day. And it's so counterintuitive, but that stop, that pause, that reset, you are more resilient, you're more impactful, and really just teaching people that it's okay. We've been going down a path that's not serving us any longer. So it's time to still and reset. So yeah, so when you live with someone that can't get out of that lens, it's always helpful.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
I know listeners are going, is she a projector? Yes, she's a projector. I have such a great anecdote that speaks to that precisely. So my first weekend I started working with Huachuma, I just left the weekend open to just be able to have it lead me. And I was led to, I have these two beautiful hibiscus in the corner of my pool. And for some reason, I was drawn to just nurture and love on these hibiscus. And into doing so, I cleared out all the old dirt. I replaced all the old stones with these beautiful, smooth pink stones. And I found myself cutting them back, cutting. And I was like, I felt about that night, I was like, what did I do? What did I do? There were three things about to bloom on each one. I look at them now. I counted this morning. I have 27 blooms on one and like more than that on the other. And it just speaks to when you lessen, when you pare back, when you rest, you deal with all the voice of the guilt and the productivity and the thing, but it's in the scaling back, the deepening. That's what allows us to really expand on the other side. And sometimes nature needs to remind me of that.
Yeah, sitting by a tree does as much as any other medicine.
True. So how can folks find you? I know we have some people that are going to be listening to this in your cars. Hello. So if folks want to learn more about you, can you share with us? We'll put these in the show notes too. But for listeners who are in their cars, where can folks find you and follow your work?
Well, you can find me on most channels at SpiritBird Official. And also my website is holtonhealingarts.com. So those are the two easiest places to find resources and what other things I'm up to.
Pretty much the same. All my accounts are under Great Things LLC. It's the company's name. So that's also the website. And you can find me on all the social media channels. So Great Things LLC or Josh Meeder, you'll find me out there.
Thank you both so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And congratulations on the microdosing experience and the expansion. That's wonderful. So exciting.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Really appreciate it. So thank you everybody for listening to. It's been a delight being with you guys today. Be sure to follow them and we'll look forward to seeing you back in just a couple weeks. Thank you for listening to the Microdosing for Healing podcast. Ready to take the next step? Please visit us online at microdosingforhealing.com. There you'll find lots of information about our global community, professional training programs, and upcoming immersions. See you there.